Hey friends, it's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. I haven't filmed a video in what feels like forever. I haven't been super consistent over the last several months with filming or editing or posting anything because I just haven't been in the right headspace with going back to work and like creatively filming videos. But I think we're in a better place now. I'm here to talk to you about all the books that I've read over the last 3 months in May, June, and July. I want to do this a little bit differently than how I would have in the past when I would have done like a super long reading wrap up like this. So I think this time I'm just going to kind of tell you quickly what books I read, give you my star rating, and then we'll move on to like my highlights or favorites, least favorites, notable things that happened over those months, because I don't want to talk in depth about every book because not every book is worth me talking about in depth. I do write Goodreads reviews for every book that I read. They're not like always super in depth, but it would give you at least an idea of like what I thought of the book. And if there's any books here that you want me to go more in depth in, I can certainly make a separate video for those. Without further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in May, June, and July. I have to tell you, my reading has been about as good as everything else in life right now. So we kicked off May reading Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas, which is a reread, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And I read The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Progeny by Tasca Lee, which is a reread for me, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And I read Firstborn by Tasca Lee, which is the sequel to The Progeny, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And I read 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Then our May House Salt book club pick was The Selection by Kiera Cass, which is a reread for me, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. And if you see me looking down, I have my phone Goodreads pulled up with all of my ratings so I can give you accurate information. Then moving on to June, the first book that I finished was Hurts to Love You by Alicia Ray, which is the 3rd book in the Forbidden Heart series, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And our House Salt Club book pick of the month for June was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, of which I gave 1.5 out of 5 stars to. And to finish out the month of June, I read Girl Gone Viral by Alicia Ray, which is the 2nd book in the Modern Love series, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. To kick off July, we started with The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Desperate Measures by Katie Roberts, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And I finally decided to DNF Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I did not rate this because I don't typically rate books that I do not finish, especially ones that I don't come close to completing, and I DNF'd this at 64%. I read an arc of They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Then in July, I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And then our July House Salt book club pick was Akata Witch by Nadia Kofor, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So in May, my favorite book of the month would probably be Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. However, because this is a reread for me, I am going to pick a different book. And instead I'm going to highlight 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson, which I listened to via audiobook and was deeply entranced by. So the whole idea of this book is that we are following a bookshop owner who wrote a blog post several years ago about the most perfect murders in fiction, his 8 favorite murders. If you were to commit these murders, you'd get away scot-free. Then several years after this blog post goes viral, murders start to happen that are based off of the 8 books he chose. And so he's looking quite guilty to the police. I deeply enjoyed this. I had never read a Peter Swanson book before, but I found this to be really fun. I loved the concept. It was super self-aware, and I just really enjoyed reading about 8 perfect murders, or what this person felt were 8 perfect murders in thriller history. There was a moment towards the end of the book though where there's a villainous monologue, which is one of my least favorite plot devices. I hate it in movies, in TV shows, in books. I just feel like it's very mustache twirly villain, and I never am satisfied by that type of plot device. However, after the villainous monologue happened, there were some excellent plot twists that saved this book for me. There were things that happened plot-wise that I was not expecting, and it totally turned this book around. I also love that we had another unreliable narrator. I'm a big fan of reading thrillers from unreliable narrators because it just adds an extra layer to the story, and this was no exception. We do see like little side tangents from the main character that are there to insert doubt and to make you feel that he is untrustworthy, and I really appreciated those, and that's why this was my favorite book of May. Plus, it was just a fantastic audiobook, and I would highly recommend. And my least favorite book and the House Salt book club pick for May were one and the same, and that was The Selection by Kira Cass. This is not a good book. Like, it did not age well. It's one of those books that I read and loved when I first read it back in 2015, I believe. And this is the cult classic on BookTube, especially among like older booktubers who have been around on the platform for a while. But it doesn't reread well. It doesn't age well. There's like no plot. America is still a terrible character. She's even worse because society has come a little further from when this book was published, and she feels very dated, and I just was not a fan. It is still super compulsively readable. I did read this the entire morning before the live show, so it's still very easy to consume, but there's better literature that's easy to consume out there in the world. I wasn't pleased to have reread this, and I could have passed on the rereading experience. And at the time when I did reread it, I thought I might continue with the second and the third book just because it is like eating candy. You know, you take one piece and soon you've eaten the whole bag, and then you question all your decisions. But now that there's been a lot of distance between me and this book, there will be no rereading of the other ones because I just don't find it to be worth it. So this was kind of a fun, cheeky throwback that we chose, and we had happy hour while we talked about it on the live show, and it was a great time. So if you'd like to watch us all have a tipsy conversation about The Selection, the link is on the screen here. And then my favorite book in June is really tied between 2 books. Like, I couldn't choose one or the other, so I'm gonna highlight both. And the first one is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel, which I believe is a debut novel, and this is an adult romance story following 2 characters, Naomi and, oh, what was his name? Nick. I was saying Naomi and Nicholas, who are engaged but kind of really hate each other and don't get along at all. So you're following these 2 characters who are lovers to enemies to lovers again, but they're engaged the whole time, and the antics and the shenanigans are just first rate for me. I love bantering and bickering, and I love the enemies to lovers trope, and this had that extra layer of these 2 characters were once in love and now they are not. And I just found this to be super relatable in the sense that couples like go through these highs and lows together. It was just really fun to read, and it was really relatable, and I loved them, and I loved their antics, and the ending was sweet, and it's one of my biggest surprises of the year for sure. My other favorite book from June was A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, which is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, yes, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I loved this sequel too. I know a lot of people feel this should be a single book story and that the series was not necessary, but I loved this sequel. In the sequel, we are not following the same 2 perspectives that we follow in the first book. The first book is focused on Wren and Harper, and in the second book, we have 2 new characters narrating the majority of your story, and you're really not following Wren and Harper anymore. You're shifted to a new area of the world with new characters and new kingdoms, and I loved these new characters so much, and I loved their relationship together, and they're on like a road trip journey together throughout most of this book, and they're bickering and they're bantering. It reminds me of Throne of Glass in all the best ways and better ways, and I just, fantasy like this is my favorite thing. And then ironically enough, my least favorite book for June was also the House Salt Club book pick. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This was not good. This is the Hunger Games prequel novel following President Snow as a teenager, and this book is pointless. Literally pointless. The reason why none of these characters or events show up in the Hunger Games, because you know that's a question when you write a prequel, is how come these events aren't touched upon in the later series? Well, the reason is dumb and negates the entire purpose of this book and basically renders it completely useless. And why? Why does this exist? I deeply, deeply despised this book. There is no point to be reading from President Snow. He is never redeemable. He is never anything but a nasty person. And this just highlights that. It was not a good book for 2020. I am confused as to the people who enjoyed this. It was not enjoyable to read at all. And I talked about it at length in my video that I posted, which I'll link on the screen. And I will also link our live show discussion because we went into it as well there if you want to hear anybody else's thoughts on this steaming pile of garbage. I mean, if you liked it, you liked it, but I just don't get it. And then I think my favorite book for July is actually an arc that I read that comes out in August. And that is They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman, which is a debut novel. And this is perfect for fans of Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liars. It takes place at this elite boarding school on the East Coast, very similar to like Gossip Girl, with the same dynamics and the same social hierarchy and the social games and just everything that comes with an elite prep boarding school. However, there's also like this murder mystery aspect to this that was very reminiscent of Pretty Little Liars, and like the way that the kids get involved in it without really any law enforcement also deeply remind me of Pretty Little Liars. We follow a main character, Jill. She's a member of the Players, which is the elite popular group. She's a senior and she's spent the last 4 years proving her spot in this group. And now that she's a senior, she has the authority to make the rules. And after an event their freshman year that leaves one of their friends dead, the seniors in Jill's class decide they're going to make their year different. However, things start to go sideways and they end up pulling the same stunt that every other senior class has. And Jill is very much wrestling with knowing that this is wrong and also not wanting to lose her friends. And I thought she was a very dynamic character. It's not often that we read about these super popular privileged kids understanding that what they're doing is wrong, and her friends definitely don't understand, but she does. And since we're reading from her perspective, it really added something unique to the story that I don't often see in books like this. This is a YA murder mystery. It's predictable. I wasn't terribly shocked by the twists and turns, but if you were a teen reading this, you would absolutely love it. Somebody who reads mystery thriller all the time maybe wouldn't enjoy this quite so much, but I had a blast reading this and I can't wait to see what happens in the sequel, because I feel like this is a book that is wrapped up in one story, so I'll be interested to see where the author decides to take it in the sequel. And then in July, I finally made the decision to DNF Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I have been reading this book since November when it came out. I got it from the library. I've had it out on ebook several times over the last several months. I put it down for like the entire first portion of 2020, and then I tried to pick it up. And I just cannot get into this book. I read a few pages and then I'm just disinterested. We're following a young woman as a Yale student. She can see ghosts, and there's this like secret society at Yale that she joins, and she plays a role in that because she can see ghosts. This had a lot of things that I should really like the secret societies, the academic setting, the ghosts and everything, but I was deeply, deeply bored. I did not feel this held my attention well at all. I did not feel that it gripped my attention very well at all. I made it 64% into this book, and I just could not care to keep reading. There was nothing compelling about the story The murder mystery aspects weren't compelling. The ghost aspects weren't compelling. I didn't care for Alex as a main character. I didn't care for any of the side characters. I just like didn't care about anything in the story. And I was really sad to not enjoy it because this was something I was so looking forward to for so long, but it just wasn't what I wanted from the story, unfortunately. So I decided to DNF it, and I think this is like a hard DNF that I'm not going to come back to in the future because I would almost have to reread what I've already read, and I have no interest in doing that. And that was it. Those are the books that I read in May, June, and July of 2020. If there's anything else in that list of books that you would like to hear me talk about, please tell me in the comments down below, and I will be sure to come up with a video idea for those books. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram or on Twitter to keep up with what I'm doing in real time, since the video recording thing has been so hit or miss, my handles are on the screen now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!